Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope you're having a good week so far. Today, I think it was on Tuesday that I said I'd come across a an article while I was doing the show, and I said we're going to talk about this on another episode, and so that's what we're going to do today. The article that I came across was from Sputnik International, and it was about why U.S. media treated BLM with kid gloves but lashed out at Capitol Hill protesters. So I wanted to take a look at that because we know that there's been a huge double standard when it comes to these two things. BLM and Antifa members were being bailed out of jail by politicians and celebrities. Their charges were being dropped or they were being lessened to like trespassing charges. And then you have at the Capitol Hill protesters being arrested and held indefinitely without bail and being treated, like high crime criminals and b- being put in like solitary confinement. And it's really, really bad. This is what we would call political persecution. It's exactly what it is. So the article says the U.S. mainstream media coverage of the Capitol Hill clashes contrasted starkly with how it treated last summer's Black Lives Matter riots, says U.S. political commentators who offered their explanation as to what appears to be a double standard approach. Wednesday's Capitol Hill protests were excoriated by the U.S. media, which described the event as an attempted coup and insurrection, calling the mob pro Trump extremists. U.S. President Donald Trump and the GOP leadership also condemned those who infiltrated the Capitol and were involved in looting and violent clashes. Still, some pundits have questioned the wording chosen by the mainstream press to portray the D.C. event versus how the media characterized the months long nationwide Black Lives Matter protests in the wake of George Floyd's death in May 2020. American journalist Andy Ngo wondered in his tweet as to why similarly strong language was not applied to the rioters who stormed, destroyed, looted, and torched government buildings in the summer of 2020. Why were the months long attempts to burn down the federal courthouse in downtown Portland not called an insurrection? Ngo asked rhetorically. War of narratives, pro Trump insurrection versus BLM peaceful protest. Actually, they called it mostly peaceful. I want to be completely accurate. The mainstream media in America has been very biased, says National Security Public Safety Executive Derek Maltz. And this is obviously very hypocritical because when they were burning down Washington, D.C., and Seattle, and Portland, Oregon, and Minneapolis, we never heard too many Democrats come out and speak about and condemn that kind of activity. They were breaking laws every day. They were destroying businesses. They were putting innocent business owners out of business. They were causing fear and anxiety from legitimate residents. And we never really heard anything. Clay Travis tweeted out, here on CNN and MSNBC, hosts and guests defending violent protesters this summer. The same condemnation should occur for all violent protesters, regardless of their politics. But that doesn't happen in today's media. And he put out a video, so let's see what it is.
I want to be clear in how I characterize it. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis.
They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I just got to stop it right there for a second. I remember when he said that. And it's like, how about you go look in the Constitution where it says that you have the right to peaceably assemble. I mean, these are the people we have giving us our news. And they don't even know that the Constitution says you have to peacefully assemble. You can't riot and burn down buildings. We live in a clown world, people. This is clown world. I have learned a few things, and I've learned this through watching Slightly Offensive with Elijah Schaefer, who I got to meet, by the way. He's a really nice person. Anyway, I like to brag about that. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, I learned a little thing about pills. So sometimes he'll talk about being red pilled, and he talked about Elon Musk being red pilled because he picked up and he brought Tesla here to Texas because he couldn't open up in California and he didn't like the fact that businesses were having to be shut down. So he said that he was red pilled. He was kind of coming to the light and realizing that Democrat policies are not good for businesses, they're not good for people, they just don't work. And then I learned after being red pilled, you can be black pilled. And I'm like, what is that? Well, apparently black pilled is when you take a look at everything that's going on around you and you just feel a sense of hopelessness, you're depressed, you feel like what's even the point, and it just makes you down and sad about what's going on in your country. But after the black pill, then there's the clown pill, which is now it's just so horrible you can't do anything but laugh at how ridiculous it is. That's clown world. Supposedly there's some pill after the clown pill. I don't know. He is doing a special with Alex Jones on Blaze TV, which I will watch at some point and learn what the other pill is. If you want to know what it is, I'll let you know as soon as I watch the special and find out. There's apparently another one. Continuing on with the video.
I don't care that much about statutes.
Shouldn't that be done shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Do not get it twisted and think that, oh, this is something that has never happened before, and then this is so terrible, and where are we, and these savages and all of that. This is how this country was started.
People get mad, and people get sick of it. People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Most of the major movements in American history have started at the grassroots level and at some point have turned into direct conflict with American government. So remember your history before you judge your present.
Thuggishness is thuggishness wherever it comes from politically, and we should be the first to call it out.
I disagree.
Huh. People. Ugh. I don't know if these people really believe what they're saying or if they're just trying to blind the masses and turn them into sheep. I have this feeling that these news commentators do not actually believe the garbage that they're spewing. I just have a hard time believing that. Moving on with the article. There is a big difference between how BLM and Capitol Hill protests have been portrayed in the American media, Maltz emphasizes, adding that this summer, the press was acting like it was legitimate protest, while rioters were committing crimes. He denounced the group of D.C. demonstrators who stepped well above the line on January 6th and did something that was outrageous and that should not be tolerated. We don't approve of any of that type of violence, he says, and it's really, really sad because the media is supposed to give the public the accurate information. The small mob of agitators that stormed into the Capitol was a minuscule minority of the vast crowd of Americans who came to protest, argues Vlad Davidiuk, GOP strategist and political analyst. To call the entire day of largely peaceful protest an insurrection or an incitement is a betrayal of the American promise of freedom and liberty. Yeah, one thing you got to remember, the people that went to see Donald Trump speak, there were thousands, I believe in the double-digit thousands of people, and only about 200 to 400 people went to the Capitol. And they were not all people from the rally. There were Antifa people there. We know that through facial recognition. People have done their homework and figured it out. We have a small feeling that they were infiltrated by FBI undercover agents and FBI informants who knew that this was going to take place and did absolutely nothing to stop it. And I think, if I'm correct, and I'm just going to look it up, but I believe DC Capitol Police are being sued for not protecting the Capitol like they were supposed to. So let me look. um, I don't know. Oh, that's a good one to pull up while we're talking about this. 35 Capitol Police officers under investigation. I think this is it, but let me just double check. So, almost 36 U.S. Capitol Police officers are under investigation for their conduct during last month's violent attack on the federal complex they are primarily assigned to protect. Of the 35 officers involved in the Capitol Police's ongoing internal inquiry, led by the law enforcement agency's Office of Professional Responsibility, 6 were suspended with pay on Thursday afternoon, according to a spokesperson who shared the update with Fox 5 DC's Lindsay Watts. Our Office of Professional Responsibility is investigating the actions of 35 police officers from that day. We currently have suspended 6 of those officers with pay, the agency statement read. Acting Chief Yoganda Pittman has directed that any member of her department whose behavior is not in keeping with the department's rules of conduct will face appropriate discipline. News of the internal investigation's progress comes more than a month after thousands of former President Donald Trump supporters, yeah, it wasn't thousands, stormed the Capitol. It was a few hundred. And it was for a few hours, not months on end. Those who participated in the siege did so to overturn results. No, we didn't. They didn't. I say we. I wasn't even there. I've never been to DC. But they didn't do it to overturn the results. What they wanted was for Pence to reject the results and have an audit done. He could have done that and given 10 days of auditing to make sure everything was legit. And Mike Pence didn't do it. I feel he betrayed his constituents as vice president. I was a huge supporter of Mike Pence because I thought he seemed to be a pretty decent religious man. He had good standing, good morals. That doesn't mean that someone who, lives a Christian life can't do something irresponsible. They do that all the time. And that doesn't mean that he's a bad person. That just to me means he's not a good leader. He should have done what the people asked of him, and there were many people asking him to have an audit done, and he just blatantly refused. Was he under pressure from the Democrats? Maybe. I don't know. That seems to be the problem when Republicans back down and get squishy. It's because they're under pressure from the progressive Democrats and they're afraid of something. Is it because they have something in their past that they don't want brought forward? Are they blackmailing them? Are they threatening them? I wouldn't put it past the Democrats to do either or both. So it's just that was the reason why this happened. They weren't trying to overthrow the government, nothing like that. But let me also remind you that it is not. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to overthrow a government that has become tyrannical. I'll pull it up eventually. But in the Constitution, or it might be the Declaration of Independence, it explicitly says that it's our right and our duty that when the government becomes tyrannical and is trying to control the people and take away your rights and your freedoms, we have the right and the duty to tear down that institution and build it back from the ground up and put in place the type of government system that we see fit to not rule over us, but to do the job of a government, which is to enforce and protect your natural rights. Anyway, moving on with this article. David Davidiuk, that's how I'm going to say it. I'm not sure if that's right, but highlights that hundreds of thousands of Americans from across the country gathered in D.C. on January 6th. Young, old, black, white, Jews, Christian, Muslims. The gatherings was aimed at demanding accountability and transparency in the electoral process, while the failure of leadership and law enforcement to maintain control led to the chaos we saw at the Capitol, according to him. To label the largely peaceful protests as violent riots when no businesses were looted, no churches were burned, and no police stations were destroyed not only undermines reality, but slanders good patriotic Americans who were marching and bringing their concerns to Congress, the Republican strategist opines. Also, I want to add into that no person that went to the Capitol that day, no citizen, killed anybody. Now, they try to say that somebody killed Officer Sicknick by hitting him in the head with a fire extinguisher. We now know that he died of natural causes days later. The other two police officers, or I think they were Capitol Police, they committed suicide a couple days later. The only person that was killed that day was Ashley Babbitt by a Capitol Police officer. And speaking of that, they're not even talking about that. We still don't know the name of that officer. However, when a regular police officer shoots somebody, whether they shoot and they don't die or they shoot them and they do die, and it's a justified shooting, and well, even whether it's justified or unjustified, doesn't matter. Anytime it happens, the name of the police officer is released almost immediately. Almost immediately, we know who that police officer is. They have no privacy. We still don't know who this police officer is. Why is that? Why is he not being held to the same standards as every other police officer? And we see here through Yahoo News that he shouldn't be charged, is what the investigators are saying. Why shouldn't he be charged? That was an unjustified shooting in my eyes. He gave no warning. They weren't doing anything wrong. She wasn't hurting anybody. She wasn't breaking anything. She wasn't stealing anything. They were surrounded all sides by other Capitol Police officers. And the biggest thing is he gave no warning to stand down. He just pulled and shot. And even if it was justified, why don't we know who it is? Why are we not releasing any information about this? It's weird to me. But, that's how it works. She was a Trump supporter, so nobody cares. Nobody cares. You know how when all the people who were criminals were shot by cops and everyone's demanding to say their name? Why not say Ashley Babbitt's name? Anytime I hear somebody that is of the other side, of the left, talk about this incident, they always say that woman. That woman. No, it's Ashley Babbitt. Why can't you say her name? You wanted us to say the names of the criminals who were killed by the police, justifiably. Why can't you say her name? Anyway, so he was apparently placed on leave after the incident occurred, but they just mention him as lieutenant. They don't name him. So Babbitt, if you don't know, she lived in California. She was with Air Force and the Air National Guard for decades. She was an avid Donald Trump supporter, and she flew to participate in the protest against the certification of electoral votes. She went bananas over him, said Tony Mazziot, Babbitt's grandfather, who raised her in regards to Trump. We supported her passion. What can I say? He added. Didn't argue with her because you'd never win. That kind of sounds like me a bit. An investigation is still going on with the Metropolitan Police Department. A spokesperson for the department said it would be premature for them to make any comment that any conclusion had been reached. The Justice Department and the Capitol Police said they cannot comment on an active investigation, but they can comment on other active investigations of other police officers. As a formality, civil rights prosecutors of the U.S. Attorney's Office opened a federal excessive force investigation, a routine standard procedure whenever an officer deploys lethal force. The name of the officer has not been released, and other far-right supporters believe it proves they have been wronged. Why don't we know who shot and killed the unarmed young lady in the Capitol yet? Wrote a Republican congressional candidate from California, Buzz Patterson, on Twitter. I don't think that not releasing his name doesn't prove that we were done wrong. But I do think it proves a double standard of the left, for sure. That's my issue with it. So Greg Price tweeted out, reminder that our nation's capital looked like this at the beginning of the summer, and most Democrats' media shrugged it off as mostly peaceful. So this was the nation's capital is legitimately on fire in every direction. This is unreal. If you can't see this picture, I urge you, on just the audio only, go to sputniknews.com and pull up this article and just look at the picture. It was literally on fire, and nobody was charged with this. Nobody paid any attention. Pay no attention to the riots going on across the country. You're dreaming. It's your imagination. That's what they don't want you to believe. Your lying eyes. You can see it for yourself. I had a conversation with somebody one time who lived in Portland, and they said, well, I live in Portland, and there's nothing like that happening. It's just normal. And I'm like, but all the videos. I know somebody who lives in Seattle, and they would show me videos of things that were happening. A friend I went to high school with lives in Seattle. He was seeing it firsthand. Are you telling me that he's lying, that his video recordings that he took are lies? Come on. In contrast, the summer riots, which were accompanied by burning, looting, and murdering innocent people and police officers, were referred to as peaceful protests by the mainstream media, Davidic points out. Most experts now agree this was because the left viewed the rioting as beneficial to their political agenda to depict America as chaotic and out of control under Trump leading up to the election, he suggests. Yep, I think that's exactly what their plan was. The American people were not entirely on the side of BLM and Antifa. Most Americans objected to the way these groups inflicted violence and disorder on their communities. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't people that went out and had good intentions and just got caught up in all of the chaos, but if you have good intentions, you should know better, at least by now. Don't team up with BLM or Antifa. They do not have good intentions. In fact, Steven Crowder did an undercover video where he sent somebody undercover to join up with Antifa at a college campus where there was some lectures going on. I think Ben Shapiro was there that night, and they were getting weapons, screwdrivers, knives, guns, because they were going to intimidate and harm the people there to listen to the lecturers, because they were right wing, they were conservatives. That's the type of stuff that Antifa does. You might be able to find that video, I'm not sure. In September 2020, national polls showed that U.S. public approval towards the BLM movement had decreased since June. The poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research indicated that 44% of Americans disapprove of BLM protests, with 39% still endorsing the movement, down from 54% in June 2020. Megyn Kelly tweeted out, rioters' shameful acts did enormous damage to their cause today. Media's hypocrisy in condemning riots so indignantly after downplaying violent BLM riots all summer is obvious. Much to blame for what happened, namely 4 years of Democrats, Trump, and media destroying all norms and trust. I don't think Trump destroyed that. I don't think Trump should be lumped into that, because a lot of people trusted Trump because he was a businessman and he cared about the average everyday American. Both events, the BLM protest and the storming of the Capitol, were entirely stage managed for us by the U.S. state media, except at the level of a certain percentage. It could even be the majority, I don't know, of gullible, unknowing participants, presumes Ron Coleman, a New York attorney and political commentator. There was no such thing as perception. Easily half the American people perceives what they are told by the official media. According to Coleman, the majority of Americans rely on official mainstream media brands, which are part of the Democratic Party, technocracy, and Wall Street. The people's opinions and even factual understanding of the world are based on what these outlets spoon feed them, he believes. Yep. And I mean, look, carrying around American flags that say RIP. A protester walks past the Russell Senate office building on Capitol Hill in Washington Friday, January 8, 2021. Now, I don't know if he's saying that he wants America to die or that, look, America is dying now. I don't know if he's for or against it. Biden and Harris adding fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, President-elect Joe Biden branded those breaching the Capitol building as nothing short of domestic terrorists while delivering a speech in Wilmington, Delaware on Wednesday. Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists. It's that basic, it's that simple, he said, pledging to pass a law against domestic terrorism. Having accused President Donald Trump of what he called inciting the violence, Joe Biden also lashed out at the Capitol Police, claiming that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they would have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. Absolutely, they would have. They would have not been arrested. They would have not been charged. Or if they were arrested and charged, their charges would be dropped or lessened. And they would be encouraged to do it all over again. Yes, he's right. They would be treated differently. Biden's BLM remark has raised some eyebrows with Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton, who criticized the president-elect for playing the race card by supporting the BLM group and pitting it against the police. Attacking cops in danger with baseless charges of racism equates healing. For her part, Xbox News host Megyn Kelly accused Biden of attacking cops in danger with baseless charges of racism. Biden said, no one can tell me that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they would have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol. We all know that's true, and it is unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris echoed Biden's criticism towards police, claiming that the Capitol Police was not tough enough with Capitol Hill intruders while releasing tear gas on peaceful protesters last summer. They're blatant liars. Julio Rosas tweeted, as someone who has covered many of the riots last year, I can say this narrative is simply false. Tear gas, pepper balls, pepper spray, and flashbangs were all used yesterday, just as they were used on rioters in 2020. So Kamala Harris said on C-SPAN, we witnessed two systems of justice when we saw one that let extremists storm the United States Capitol and another that released tear gas on peaceful protesters last summer. We know this is unacceptable. We know we should be better than this. This is simply the Democrats race baiting and pitting white people against black people. And I can tell you that the lockdown for the virus was not for our safety, but it was intended to keep us separated so we could not communicate with each other while they spew out all this garbage of how white people are racist and bigoted and hate every black person in America. And we have no way of communicating because they fearmongered us so much into just staying in our homes and not going anywhere. And you're just being brainwashed with all of this junk that they're telling you. And now that you're coming out into to outside and you see white people, you've been so filled with anger and hate by these people that have been lying to you, by the way, that all you want to do is just hurt that person who absolutely did nothing wrong to you. It's a way to divide and conquer and control a country. Race wars divide and conquer. And that's exactly what they did. This was a whole conglomerate of things that they did to cause all of this distress and hatred against one another. That's what this was about. They want full control and power. However, Julio Rosas, a town hall journalist and military veteran, called Harris out for making a false statement and arguing that tear gas, pepper balls, pepper spray, and flashbangs were all used on January 6th, just as they were used on rioters in 2020. American lawyer, author, and radio personality Mark Levine referred to relatively mild rhetoric used by Kamala Harris towards BLM protesters. In particular, she said on record during The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on June 18, 2020, that anti-racism protests would not end until Election Day and, quote, that they are not going to let up and they should not. Yep, she did. She definitely incited these riots to continue. I thought this would be fun to read some of these comments. So this one, it's from Belfast Antagonist. Sputnik have once again allowed some Neanderthal knuckle-dragging oaf to pin an article on their site without ever fact-checking it. BLM protests are routinely diverted or restricted in regards to movement or destination. BLM have on many occasions been hemmed in or faced with multiple ranks of riot police and National Guard fully armed and prepared. It was Trump supporters who drove a car into women and children in Charlottesville. It was Trump supporters who brought the mayhem to Portland. It was Trump supporters who planned to storm the Michigan State Capitol, kidnap and execute on national television the governor. Okay, so just to address this, the Charlottesville people, those are actually left-wing activists posing as right-wing white supremacists to start up a fight and divide there in Charlottesville. You can look that story up for yourself. And also, we now know from the show that I did about the FBI infiltrating the group that was planning to storm the Michigan Capitol and kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, that was 3 FBI undercover agents or FBI informants that kind of pushed them into doing that to turn from just protesting at the Capitol to actually committing a crime. So they were entrapped. It was a rifle-carrying Trump supporter who killed 2 people in the scene in Wisconsin, and it was the police who protected him afterwards, letting him leave the scene of the crime, even giving him food and water before he went, yet they had watched him kill in front of them. How anybody couldn't watch that video and see that that was actually self-defense? I know a lot of people say he brought a weapon over state lines. No, he didn't. He had no right to be there. Well, he worked at a water park in Kenosha, which is about 30 minutes from where he lived in Illinois. Yes, he had to cross state lines to get there. He was a lifeguard in Kenosha. He knew people in Kenosha. He had gone to the high school to clean off graffiti for a while. Then he was invited to a business to help protect it from being damaged even further from the night before, where they burned down half of his business and his cars. He was given a gun, which in Wisconsin, a 17-year-old can carry a long rifle openly without a permit. It's not illegal. And the first guy was trying to take it from him and chasing him. So, adrenaline pumping, he shot. Then the other guy that got shot in the arm ran at him, pointing a gun at him, which, by the way, he was a felon and was not allowed to be carrying a gun. And the other guy hit him in the head with a skateboard. What would you do in that situation? Because I know I would protect myself. Maybe I'll do a show soon and we'll get an update on Kyle Rittenhouse and see what's going on. The anti-fascist movement, Antifa, is a collection of teenage misfits and has nothing to do with BLM. Please learn the difference. It may reduce your mouth breathing a little in future, though. I doubt it. Clean house Sputnik before you end up as just another live leak where Trumpistan, okay, mindsets are encouraged and opposing view accounts deleted. Okay. And then let's read the reply. Belfast antagonist, the burning buildings did not indicate any sort of restriction of movement. One man drove a car into protesters, and you're going to blame everyone else there for his actions? Mayhem in Portland? How about several blocks of Seattle being taken over by activists? A few people planning to kidnap the Michigan governor? Talk about tunnel vision. The young man who killed 2 people in self-defense? Attack someone and they'll defend themselves. Accusing him of wrongdoing is like the female stereotype of hitting a man and then crying victim if he hits back. And then you try to separate BLM's actions from Antifa, which is reasonable, but it shows your true agenda. I do not defend the teenage misfits, but BLM is in no way legitimate. Cops kill more white people than black people every year, and as one man said, if police had not killed one black person all year, it still would not have lowered the black homicide rate by 1%. FBI crime data spells it out. Blacks commit an almost equal number of homicides as whites, yet there are 5 times as many whites as blacks in the USA. Basic math shows blacks in the U.S. are 5 times as likely to commit homicide. And let's be clear, that's a cultural issue, not a race issue. Around 80% of homicides committed by blacks are against other blacks. If Black Lives Matter really cares about blacks, they'll do something about it, so many blacks killing other blacks instead of blaming everyone else for it. And the hurricanes that hit Louisiana, did any of the money donated to BLM get sent back to people in the hurricane hit areas? Where did all those millions in donations go? No, it's like Booker T. Washington said. There is a class of black people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the black race before the public. Having learned they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the black man to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. Booker T. Washington lived from 1856 to 1915 and was a consultant to Presidents Roosevelt and Taft. The mentality, he pointed out, still exists today, over 100 years later, in the form of BLM. Okay, I agree with that statement. I definitely do. It is a cultural issue. The FBI statistics can spell it out. I did a show about all of that as well. You can go back and listen to that. It was under Asian hate crime, and I spelled out statistics about homicides and percentages of the homicides and who commits them and everything like that. But I mean that's a very true statement. And grievance and hardship and victimhood, it does pay in today's society. That's why people do it. It pays to be a victim. It pays to it's a social currency. It gets you sympathy. And that's what all people are looking for. Excuse me. That's just what people want, and that's why they do it. Who knows? But I am sick and tired of the separate treatment and the double standards of the left. It's getting on my last nerve, and I don't know why more people aren't speaking up about it or doing more about it. And I saw a video yesterday on Facebook, and it was this guy who was talking about, you know, how we have all of these Republicans that get up and say what we want to hear, and they make these promises that they're going to do these things because it's what we want, and then they get into office and they do absolutely nothing that they promised, and that the only problem with Donald Trump was that he didn't realize that the swamp wasn't just on the left, it was also on the right. And I have to agree with him. We have a lot of swampy people on the right as well. A lot of squishy Republicans, a lot of rhinos who don't want to do anything. They don't want to have political power. They just want to be there and act like they're fighting for you, but they're happy when nothing happens because all they have to do is just sit there and make money. Most people are going into Congress to make money, and you should not go in poor or with a certain amount of money and come out with an exorbitant amount more than you went in. That's not how it should work. We need to start setting term limits on the House of Representatives. I say you get 2 2-year terms and you're out. 4 years of service, done. The Senate, you get 1 6-year term and you're out. Get out. That's how it should be. Age limits on it. Can't be past a certain age because at some point, I know Donald Trump is older, but he just has, he's a healthy older person, but he's not healthy because he eats Big Macs. But what I'm saying is he's all there. He's with it. He was able to keep up. But not everybody at that age can do it. You can clearly see that former President Joe Biden cannot handle it. Vice President, former VP, my bad. Former VP Joe Biden cannot handle it. He's not all there. There is something wrong. He is barely standing. Those puppet strings won't last for long. And I don't know who's controlling him, but it's not him. He's not controlling himself. I can tell you that. It's crazy. So we need to not just focus on the politicians on the left. We need to focus on the Republicans who are Republican in name only. And they're siding with the left and they're progressively moving towards the left all the time. And if you want to know what we can do to conserve America and keep her strong, I highly suggest you go watch John Doyle. He's a YouTuber, and he makes really good videos. I'm going to tell you the name of this video, and you should go watch it. So it's Heck Off Commie is his show, and the latest video that he did was 5 new conservative policies to take our country back. It's a 35-minute video. If you can handle listening to me for 35 minutes to an hour, go watch the video. It's really good, and it will really give you an idea of what we need to do so we can start fighting back. I'm going to subscribe to his channel because I haven't on this YouTube yet. See, y'all get to watch me subscribe. Anyway, that's what I would do. Go watch that video. It's really good. Another thing I want to talk about real quick, and this has nothing to do with BLM or Antifa, but it does have to do with Biden, and I think it's important to point it out. The Catholic bishops, they approved the communion document that's aimed at possible rebuke of Biden. Democrats' pro-abortion policies are a source of conflict for the pro-life Catholic Church. So it says, who's this written by? Marissa Schultz from Fox News. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops voted overwhelmingly to draft a formal document on the meaning of the Eucharist after a contentious debate on whether President Biden, or as I like to call him, former VP Biden, and other politicians who support abortion policies are worthy of receiving communion at Mass. More than 73% of the U.S. bishops casting ballots at a virtual conference this week supported tasking the USCCB's Doctrine Committee to draft language on maintaining consistency with the Eucharist. A section of the document is expected to include a specific admonition to Catholic politicians and other public figures who disobey church teaching on abortion and other core doctrinal issues. The vote tally announced Friday was 168 bishops in favor, 55 opposed, and 6 bishops abstaining. Up next, at least two-thirds of the bishops would have to vote to adopt the new language at their next gathering slated for November. The decision on whether Biden should be allowed to receive communion would still be left up to individual bishops, as is standard for all churchgoers, but a new document would inform those decisions. Cardinal Wilton Gregory, the Archbishop of Washington, has made clear that Biden is welcome to receive communion at churches in the archdiocese. During Thursday's debate, Gregory pressed against authoring a new communion document at this time. The choice before us at this moment is either we pursue a path of strengthening unity among ourselves or settle for creating a document that will not bring unity but may very well further damage it, Gregory said. The secret vote tally was announced Friday afternoon, but the lengthy debate on the measure took place Thursday during a virtual session of the Bishops' National Meeting. Catholics believe that during Mass, the bread and wine used for communion become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. The sacrament of the Eucharist is so sacred to the Church that some bishops have expressed concerns about whether Biden is worthy for communion, given his pro-abortion policies that run counter to the Catholic Church's pro-life beliefs. Biden, who attends Mass regularly, says he personally opposes abortion, but doesn't think he should impose that position on Americans who feel otherwise. He's taken several executive actions during its presidency that were hailed by abortion rights advocates. That's the thing, okay? If you don't personally believe in it, but you don't think you have a right to impose on other people, I guess that's fine. But you're assigning new executive orders to further the right of abortion, taxpayer funded abortion. So if you don't think you have a right to step into that arena, then you definitely don't have a right to force people who don't believe in it to be paying for it. I see a very big problem with that. Asked about the Catholic bishop's move on Friday and whether he would be denied communion, Biden said, "That's a private matter, and I don't think that's going to happen." Well, I hope it does. Not that I really care that much, because I'm not Catholic and I don't believe in the Catholic religion. However, everybody knows that the Catholic Church has always stood for pro-life and that you can be excommunicated for not following the rules, just like I'm Baptist, so we call it churching. You can have someone leave the church until they get corrected if they're doing something that's against God and the Bible. So it's kind of the same thing, just different names for it. But the problem with the Catholic Church is some of their doctrinal beliefs are not sound, and they conflict with Bible. So that's my problem with the Catholic Church. But I feel like this is important to point out because this is something that you're having a public figure claiming to be this religious person, and even if you're not Catholic, if you're looking at your president who says that he's religious, but he's okay with murdering babies, that's a problem. Whether you're Catholic or not, that's a problem. Some bishops believe Biden forced their hand on making a decision, and the church's credibility was on the line if they didn't move forward with a document reaffirming core Catholic values. "It's not the bishops who have brought us to this point, it's some of our public officials," said Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City, Kansas, during Thursday's debate. "This is a Catholic president doing the most aggressive things we've ever seen on life at its most innocent." Still, some bishops said the document itself wouldn't be about one individual and reiterated that it would bar any one person from receiving communion, since that is still left up to individual bishops under church law. Asked directly on Thursday whether Biden should receive communion, the chairman of the USCCB Doctrine Committee made it clear it's not up for the conference to decide, but rather look at Eucharist consistency more broadly. That's a decision of his bishop. Bishop Kevin Rhodes of Fort Wayne, South Bend, Indiana, said at a press conference. That is not the task of our committee to look at individuals. I will say on The View, Whoopi Goldberg was like defending Biden about this. At the same time, while she was defending him, she was saying that the Pope is acting too political, but yet not political enough.
We were talking about U.S. Catholic bishops who are talking about denying President Biden communion for being pro-choice. Joy, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I wanted to clear one thing up, or not clear it up, but just make an important point here, is that some people believe that the death penalty is also government-sanctioned murder. And a lot of the people who believe in the death penalty do not believe in abortion. So there's a rather inconsistent thing right there.
Let me just correct her. Murder of innocent babies, death penalty for violent criminals. Those are two separate things. Someone getting the death penalty because they were a serial murderer and killed 5 people. They were not innocent people. They were not safe to release out into society, and society with their taxpayer dollars should not have to support him for the rest of his life. That is why we have the death penalty. They deserve it. They're evil people. They're not innocent. They're not innocent little children that are being murdered just because the mother doesn't want the child and can't, have some impulse control. So, not the same thing. You can't compare them both. This is what the pro-lifers or the pro-choicers like to do, compare abortion and the death penalty. But they know that it's not the same thing. So it doesn't work.
I personally am pro-choice, and under certain circumstances, I believe in the death penalty. So I am very consistent. Here's the thing about this, what's going on.
That's not consistency, by the way.
On here, in my opinion. The President of the United States, Biden, is one of the most powerful people in the world, maybe along with a couple of other countries.
Just real quick. I don't believe that Biden is one of the most powerful people in the world. I believe he might be the least powerful person in the world. They try to perceive him as powerful, but he's not truly powerful.
These bishops could be working with him on climate change. I mean, we're destroying God's earth, okay? And on the refugee...
Okay. Destroying God's earth. So does she believe in God and still think it's okay to kill babies? That's the problem with these leftists. They are so inconsistent in everything that they say. And I don't even know if they're self-aware enough to realize what they're saying, that they don't understand that they are being self-contradictory almost every time they speak about issues.
Crisis and what have you, and poverty in this country. Instead, they want to fight. They want to fight. So why do they want to fight? Well, they are losing parishioners left and right in the Catholic Church. And they are threatened by that. In 2020, 76% of parishioners went to church. Into the year 2000, sorry. In 2000, 76% went to church. In the year 2020, 58% went to church. They are...
So there's a problem with that percentage. In 2020, the percentage dropped because churches were locked down and people were being arrested for attending church. So, of course, the amount of people going to church went down. And she's just specifically talking about Catholics. She's not including all the other religions that go to church. She's just talking strictly about Catholics. They were shut down. They weren't allowed to go. It's not like they decided to quit going because they realized there's something wrong with the Catholic Church. They were actually forced to stay home and not go.
hemorrhaging parishioners. Ever since the the abuse of children in the Catholic Church, this has been steadily going down. So instead of really trying to fix things and talk about things that actually matter to people, the most important thing being climate change, they go to these cultural issues to distract. It's very similar to what the Republican Party is up to right now. They're grasping at straws because they see that they will be extinct very soon, which is why they're trying to stop people from voting in many of the states. So this is very similar to the Catholic Church. And also Barr, he also supported contraception. I was saw this today. He supported same-sex marriage. He was pro-choice. And yet they never said one word, as Sonny pointed out, about having to stop him from having communion. Why? Because he was a Republican and he was protecting against gay rights. And
I don't know if that's true about William Barr, but I don't think that's why they didn't bring it up. I think the biggest reason that is being brought up right now is because Biden is, they claim he's the president. So he's this large, powerful political figure. I think that's a little more important than William Barr. I'm just saying.
And other things that the Catholics don't approve of, even though the church has many, many homosexuals within the church. I mean, the hypocrisy is very thick. And so that's why you have many lapsed Catholics like myself, even though I have to add, and this is just, some of my very close friends are priests and nuns.
Yeah, you may have homosexuals that go to church. That doesn't mean that the church approves of that lifestyle. They would never be allowed to be leaders in the church. Well, at least in where I go to church, they wouldn't be allowed. We wouldn't stop them from coming. Of course, you want them to come and you want them to learn and you want them to be loved so that they get their life together. I mean, look at Milo Yiannopoulos. Been an entire year since he's decided that he knows that that's not the life that God wanted for him. He knew that it was wrong to be homosexual, and he's been doing this now for a year where he's been trying to live the life that God had planned out for him and not be a slave to his lust and his desires. And I think that's a good thing. See, the left hates him. They said, be whoever you want to be. But the minute that he went from being gay to trying to live a more godly life and try not to give in to these attractions to men, they hate him. But I mean, they're not tolerant of people who decide that they're no longer gay. But if you're straight and you decide you're gay, they're so tolerant of that. They don't want to be tolerant, and they don't want people to live the right kind of life. They want people to be confused. The more confused you are, the easier you are to mold and manipulate into the person that they want you to be so they can control you. That's the same thing with being overweight and lazy. The fatter you are, the more lazy you are, the easier you are to manipulate and control. That's why they're offering free food to people, Krispy Kreme donuts to go in and get the jab. That's why they do that. They know what they're doing. Believe me, Democrats are not stupid. They are very smart people. Now, they may sound stupid to us because we know their policies don't work. But underneath all of that, and they may use stupid people as a front, like AOC. I don't think she's particularly smart. They kind of use her as just like a distraction, and the squad, all of them as distractions. But the people that are controlling the left, that are making the moves, they are intelligent and they're very smart at how they do things, how they manipulate words, how they change definitions of words, and they're just very good at what they do. And they've been doing it for decades. And that's why they have control over all of the institutions, big tech, government, universities, media, the culture. They own it all. The education system, all of it is under the left. And it's because the Republicans let it happen. It's our fault. That's true. It's our fault. Let me find where Whoopi chimes in here.
And I love them. And there are so many people in the church who are wonderful. It's not a monolithic institution. It's his job.
Right here. We're safe.
And also the prerogative of a president. We cannot be a nation that is ruled by one religion. It's just not the way this country was created. That's why people fought so hard to say, listen, we have separation of church and state. So, you know, you don't have to worry about John Kennedy.
The idea about separation of church and state, nowhere is that in any of our founding documents, by the way. But the purpose of separation of church and state was, the intent was that state could not impose on the church a religion that everybody has to follow, kind of like how you had the Church of England, or even in France when it was all Catholicism, and if you were Protestant, you were persecuted. That's what separation of church and state is. The state cannot impose a state religion on the people. It does not mean that the church cannot influence the state in their politics, because politics inevitably are ruled by religion. People institute laws and morals, and this is something I heard from Michael Knowles. They institute laws and morals based on religion. So yes, and you've always heard that politics is politics is downstream of culture, or culture is downstream of politics, and then it's religion is downstream of politics. So I think it's culture is downstream of politics, and politics is downstream of religion. So it's all intertwined and connected. But that's not what the intention of separation of church and state was, and many people get it wrong.
And John Kennedy did what he needed to do as president for all the people. So to call the president of the United States out like this, when you allowed, you know, a president who also said he was Christian, and I guess there are many sides to this story, but
saying you're Christian does not mean you're Catholic. Christian definition, it means Christ-like. And the true definition of being a Christian is being born again by grace through faith. That's what it is. It doesn't mean that you're Catholic. It doesn't mean that you're Southern Baptist. It doesn't mean that you're Mormon. It doesn't mean any of that, because it has nothing to do with religion. Being a Christian is just being saved, being born again. That's all it is. So just because Trump said he was Christian doesn't mean he was Catholic. I think he is Catholic, but I can't be sure. But those two things are different.
We had a president who did all kinds of crazy stuff and nobody said boo. Here's a man who's following the law and saying, listen, it's not for me, but I understand that this is something you may need. As president of the United States, I understand you may need this, and the law says that you are entitled to this. That's his job. Now, I'm all for separation of church and state because I don't think people are rational sometimes when they're talking about religion. I look and I think of all of the children who need help, all the kids in foster care, where are all those folks? It can't just be those unborn that everybody wants to speak for. You have to speak for the kids who are here.
People who speak for saving the innocent unborn children, they do care about the children that are in foster care. They do. The problem with foster care and with adoption is that it's way too expensive. And so people who can't have children, who would love to adopt babies, they can't afford it. That's a government problem. That's something that needs to be looked into. Make it cheaper. Don't make the process easier, but make it more affordable. You'd have more children adopted, I guarantee it. This is why when people adopt, they adopt from overseas, because it's so much cheaper. The government doesn't care about the kids. They don't. And it's the government's job to take care of these kids when they pull them out of homes and put them in state foster care.
We got to make programs for them as well. I would like everybody to get on board for that.
I have a correction because I read In the New York Times, I misread something this morning in the New York Times. Because, truthfully, it was not written very clearly. So I have to correct that. William Barr is not pro-choice, and he's not for gay marriage, but he is for the death penalty.
Okay, you see what she did there? I said I didn't know any of that about William Barr. And she has to come back and say, yep, that was wrong. He's not pro-choice. He's not pro-gay marriage, but he is for the death penalty. Guaranteed, most people are going to hear the first thing she said about William Barr, and when she comes back in to correct it, typically what happens is the first thing you hear that sticks into your mind, and people who blindly follow what they hear, they don't hear this correction. They already have an opinion now made up of what they think this person is, and that the Catholic Church didn't deny him communion even though he was pro-life or pro-choice and pro-gay marriage, but they're doing it to Biden. And then she comes in and corrects it. This is how the left works. This is how they manipulate your thoughts and your feelings. But see, I'm not a blind sheep drone just running through life. I have a mind and I can hear both things. And I was not sure that William Barr was either of those things. And he's not. But most people are not going to hear this correction. Very sneaky.
And so in that case, I was right. And I do think that the Catholic Church, if they're going to be telling people who can and cannot get communion, the death penalty should be high on their list, since, again, it's a government murders. So that's all.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the death penalty. That's the problem. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just some people are so stupid. They truly are. Anyway, I hope you had a good time. I hope that this was informative. I encourage you, like I said, please go watch the video by John Doyle, 5 Ways That Conservatives Can Take Back the Country. It's very informative, and it's a good start as to what you need to do to start fighting back against our government and these policies. And I'm going to look into the Kyle Rittenhouse thing and see what's going on with that. Maybe I'll do an episode next week on that if I can get the information. And also, if you haven't been paying attention, I guess you've been living under a rock for the last year and a half. But the whole treating the BLM Antifa rioters different than the Capitol Hill protesters, I wouldn't call that a riot. They're more like that was more like a protest. Go to YouTube and you can watch videos of the ways that they were treated. Um, there was law enforcement force used on both sides. The problem is that the Capitol Hill protesters only did it once and only for a few hours, while BLM and Antifa did it for months and months on end and are still doing it. I think it was in Portland that it was $2 million worth of damage. That might be Minnesota. I'm not exactly sure. In Minneapolis, that might have been. But you're talking millions of dollars in damages. And they say, oh, well, these people with the businesses, they have insurance. Yeah, well, insurance doesn't cover all of that damage. And it doesn't just like kick in the next day. That takes a while. So they're losing their livelihoods while they're waiting on that. And they're still going to have to put their own money forward to get their business built back up and fixed and back up and running. And they're just getting away with it. And it's ridiculous. They are criminals and they should be in jail. Period. That's it. I'm tired of the double standards. I hope you are too. Let's fight together. Please join me on my Facebook, Lauren Collins. I just gotta say something. And you can email me, gotta say something 21@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from any of my listeners. You can ask questions, give me ideas of something to talk about, what you would like me to talk about, anything like that. I was thinking about I wanted to do something where people would send in questions, and one day a week I could do like a mailbag like the Daily Wire does if y'all are interested in doing that. You can also find the audio only podcast on Pandora, Anchor, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, everywhere that it's available pretty much. I think it's on all platforms. And you can also join my subreddit, just gotta say something. And I would appreciate that. That means a lot. Eventually, I will start a Twitter and an Instagram, like I said, maybe a Gab page. I don't know. Maybe an actual Facebook page. I don't have just like a group, not an account, but just a group on Facebook, and you could join there. Please like and subscribe, share this video, leave a comment. I will answer all comments that are left for me, and I appreciate the support. As always, please go subscribe to the Scott Ford Show, Isaac Hayes with the Cajun Conservative, and his Christian podcast, Brothers Just Searching, my friend Christy at the Lennar Score on Facebook, and Christy's Closet with the K on YouTube, and TV's Rob is Unwoke. Great people. You're really going to enjoy them. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you the next time. God bless.